everybody, in this video today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what separation anxiety is and how it presents itself. Now, separation anxiety is a big symptom of PANS and PANDAS. Now, not everyone with PANS PANDAS has it, but it is relatively common and it can affect people's lives in quite a large way. This is one of the first ways in which it can present itself. It can prevent people from being able to sleep in a room on their own or even go to the bathroom on their own. So that is a huge impact it can have on someone's life, because then if it's a child who has it, the parent may have to go to bed later because they may have to stay with the child until the child goes to sleep. The parent may not be able to have much of their own time and like not being able to go to the toilet on their own. If it's like in school and they need someone to come to the school toilets with them, then that can sometimes be a little bit embarrassing for people. So it can affect people in a lot of ways. Now, separation anxiety used to be thought to be something that only affected children, but that's actually very far from the truth. Adults can have separation anxiety and can be diagnosed with separation anxiety disorder. A lot of people think of separation anxiety as a child who is very anxious about being separated from their parents, but this isn't the only way it can present. For example, if it's an adult, it could be that they are anxious about being separated from their significant other / partner. In some cases, it may be even a pet that the individual is anxious about being separated from, or a sibling. Now, another way which separation anxiety can present is that an individual may have the physical symptoms of anxiety when they are away from the individual that they feel anxious from being separated from. So they may get very tense, shaky, nauseous, if they are separated, when they are separated from that individual. A person with separation anxiety may be reluctant to go to school because they know that if they go to school they will be separated from their parents, or just in that example, if that's who they are afraid of being separated from, and that can cause them a lot of distress. People with it may also have panic attacks when they are separated from the individual. They may have meltdowns and just cry a lot and get extremely distressed. An individual with separation anxiety may feel sort of isolated from their peers, because if their peers have a sleepover together, the individual with separation anxiety may not feel comfortable going because they know that they may cry and have a meltdown if they're away from their parents or whoever else it is that they are anxious about being separated from. They may not be able to go to these events because they may know that it will affect them negatively. And also school trips. Lots of schools have residential school trips where they go and stay somewhere overnight or for a week or something. Those can be very difficult for people with separation anxiety, and they can end up feeling quite isolated if they are unable to go to these trips with their friends. An individual with separation anxiety may be extremely worried about harm coming to their family members if they're away, or even to themselves, and they may feel like their family members will protect them, or they may worry that their family members or whoever it is that they are afraid of being separated from may abandon them. And this can also affect people's dreams. People may have nightmares about being abandoned. A person with separation anxiety may be reluctant to go to university because they know that if they go to university they are likely going to have to move far away from their family and just stay on their own or with a roommate, but they're still going to be separated from likely whoever they are afraid of being separated from. So in this case it can affect a person's life path because they may decide not to go to university because of that. However, there are other options. Online university is a thing in some places that you can do. An adult with separation anxiety may even try to visit their loved one at their workplace if they're anxious about like how they are and if they can't deal with being away from them. And they may phone their loved one again and again to make sure that they are okay. An individual with separation anxiety may struggle a lot with school attendance because they're too anxious about being away from their family, and this can then affect their grades. And when an individual with separation anxiety is in school, they may not be able to focus as they're so anxious and distressed. To be diagnosed with separation anxiety disorder, a child will need traits of it meeting specific criteria for 4 weeks, and to be diagnosed as an adult, an adult will need it for at least 6 months. I'm not sure why there is such a time difference in getting like being able to get a formal diagnosis as a child versus as an adult. Maybe they just don't want to diagnose as many adults with it. I'm not really sure. Maybe adults have short-lived phases of it. I'm not sure, and they don't want to diagnose that as a disorder. But separation anxiety in adults, most adults with separation anxiety didn't have it as a child. It apparently in adulthood often happens after a stressful or traumatic situation, like a divorce or someone dying. Children with separation anxiety may appear quite clingy and may follow their parents around and kind of try to make sure that the parents aren't going anywhere without them. Adults with separation anxiety may be accused by their partners, if it's their partner that they are worried about being separated from. They may be accused by their partner of being quite controlling, not to say that people with separation anxiety are controlling, but because the person may be so anxious that they keep texting or phoning their partner saying, where are you? What are you doing? Are you okay? Or the partner may just know that just by going out, they could cause immense distress to the person with separation anxiety, or the person with separation anxiety may say, if you're going somewhere, can I come too, and stuff, and that may come off as overly controlling or desperate. And can cause strain in a relationship, so it can affect that as well. But it isn't intentional. A person doesn't choose to have separation anxiety. Kids and adults, it's not a choice. They don't want to be going through that. In my own personal experience, I've never been formally diagnosed with separation anxiety disorder, but I have had separation anxiety traits throughout my life. So when I was in preschool, my dad had to stay with me for either the first day or the first few days, when the other kids didn't need their parents to do that because I was just too anxious about being on my own. And in preschool, we had to go take our name off of a board to register ourselves present. I would just stand and flat out refuse to do that, because I knew that if I took my name off the board, I'd be left alone. And to me, that was horrible. And on my first day of I think it's primary school, when I was 4 years old, I was dragged in kicking and screaming by the teaching assistant on my first day because I was too anxious to go in. And it's very strange because before I went in, that was anxiety, but after, once I was in, it was just full on despair, it felt like, and I would cry a lot because I did not want to be separated, and that despair was just my reaction to being separated. Then the separation anxiety, it wasn't something I really grew out of at all. I remember when I was 5 years old, I think that my bed was actually in my parents' bedroom because I didn't want to sleep in a room my own and I couldn't. And I would still struggle regularly to get into school because it would cause me a lot of anxiety and I'd cry. And I remember my mum would tell me that she's waiting outside in the car whilst I'm in school. She actually didn't, but she told me that to make me less anxious. And I believe it was either, I don't know if it was taking me there or picking me up, but I was quite difficult both taking me to school and picking me up from school. Picking me up from school was for other reasons, so sometimes my nan actually had to come and help to deal with me and stuff. But yeah, with the separation anxiety stuff, when I was going to sleepovers with my grandparents, that was absolutely horrible because I would just cry and beg to go back home. And that was not nice at all because I just wanted nothing more than to go back home. But they couldn't always take me home because sometimes it was like the middle of the night or just really, really late when I would have that sort of meltdown. And I couldn't, for a while I did sleep in my room on my own again, but then when I had overnight onset severe OCD, I then got separation anxiety again and couldn't sleep in a room on my own until I was 13 years old. And my dad would just have to lay on the floor next to my bed until I'd fall asleep. And I actually thought he slept there all night, but then he eventually told me that he actually didn't. He didn't stay there, but he told me that years after that he didn't actually stay all night. And I remember going on a school trip when I was 13. I have made a video about this, but it was a week-long school trip, my first ever residential school trip. I had missed out on all the other residential trips throughout primary school and stuff because of the anxiety about being separated, and also my OCD and stuff it would not have worked. But I had my first residential school trip when I was 13, and I was feeling very excited for it, but then I got there and just bawled my eyes out, cried a lot. I was crying on and off for days. I was just so distressed that I was separated. I wanted to go back home and be with my parents, and I was so anxious that I just couldn't eat, and I kind of lived off milk for that trip because I just felt like I couldn't eat. I was too anxious. And it's ironic now that I lived off milk because I actually have a dairy sensitivity. I didn't know it then though, but that's what I had to do because milk was something that would at least calm my stomach a little bit and give me a bit of nutrition, I guess, so that I didn't completely starve. But yeah, wasn't fun. When I was in primary school, I did struggle to go to the bathroom on my own. Like, they didn't have to come into the cubicle with me, but my friend would have to just come to the school toilets with me, and I didn't want to go on my own because I don't think, actually this last bit probably isn't separation anxiety as such, but I was worried about Bloody Mary coming in the mirror. There was a lot about Bloody Mary, and they were saying, like, if you say something into a mirror 3 times, then Bloody Mary will appear. But then that really freaked me out. And after that, I couldn't go to the toilets on my own without a friend. So they had to come with me. And I remember one time, basically, me and a friend at a holiday club we went to the toilet together, but then we were messing about, and my friend was like, should we just stay in the changing rooms for a while? So we did, but then the teacher was saying, right, you are not going to the toilet together anymore, you've got to go on your own. And I just completely cried and had a little meltdown because I couldn't go to the bathroom on my own. And then thankfully they understood, and then I could go with someone as long as we didn't mess about. But I could not go to the bathroom on my own. But I don't know if that was separation anxiety or just the anxiety about Bloody Mary. My way to deal with that was to have someone with me. But yes, I was never formally diagnosed with separation anxiety disorder, but when I was in primary school, my school, I believe, said I had it because they could see, like, being dragged in, kicking and screaming by the teaching assistant isn't quite typical, and just full-on crying in despair when your parents leave isn't quite normal either. So I definitely had traits of it, but I was never formally diagnosed. I remember when I was younger, like, if my dad had to leave me in the car just to pay for petrol or something, I would immediately start worrying that they're going to abandon me. They never did, obviously, but that's where my mum would go with that. And one time when I was like, I wasn't really young, but my parents like went out very shortly to, like, I don't know what they're doing, maybe taking the car for an MOT or something, and I was so scared that they'd never come back, and I was just crying so much.